Welcome back to ZHA Maya training. Today we're going to be creating this object, which is ErwinHauerDesignIII. It's made with curves, boundary surfaces, or boundary surface, to drive polygons, which will later mirror into the complete form, and then use soft selects to do the deformation you're seeing across here, and an introduction into crease sets for Maya as well, and how they can be used. Great. So let's get started. So let's open up the start file. There's the start file. There's our scene. So this object here is something I made earlier in true Blue Peter fashion. If you're English, you'll understand that reference. If not, no worries. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that we can see this, but we can't click on it. At the moment, if we click on it, we may accidentally pick this up. So we'll put this on a display layer. So if you can't see the display layer here, it might be because you're in Attributes or Toolbox, but it's the top option, top tab here. I'll bring up the layers. So while the object is selected, go Layers, Create Layer from Selected. Bingo, and it creates a layer. If you double click it, you can give the layer a name. In this case, we'll use Ref. You can even colorize it if you want, so you could be like a different color, like bright pink, for example, and save. But click off, that now becomes that color. Now we want to reference this, so I can't click on it. So if I click the third box here, that sends it into a template. As you can see there, now I can't click on it, but we can see it. Great. So let's start laying down the curves that create this shape. So the easiest way to create the top of the boot and the toe of the boot is using a circle. Spacebar, create NURBS primitives, circle. There's our little circle. So what we want to do is we want to have a radius of 7, a sweep of 90 degrees to linear, because we're going to be making polygons from this, so we want to be able to see the edging or faceting. We want 3 sections. Okay, and that's good for our boot. So I'm going to duplicate that using Control D, and I'm going to move that into position. So I've already got grid snapping switched on here, which is why when I move it, it will only snap to a particular number, in this case 25. We'll select the lower edge, the edge we left behind. We'll hold down J on the keyboard. Sorry, before we do it, we'll go Rotate Tool, and we'll hold down J and rotate that into position, so it's 90 degrees. Move that down, and we can then move that across. There we go. So that's on -25 in X. So we have our top and our toe. Now we need to do the top half of the foot. So we'll look at it from, no, I'll keep it in perspective for now. So let's create a new circle. Spacebar, create circle. Let's get the recipe up for that. So we want this one to be 18. Again, 90 degrees. Cubic. And leave it on 8 sections, because there's going to be roughly 8 sections going up on this edge. So hold down J to rotate this. So we'll do this one first, this axis first. We want that to be 90 degrees, and then we want to do this axis again, so that should be 90 as well. Check your channel box to make sure that's the case. And it's 25 units in this direction, and then 25 units in this direction. Should mean those two curves line up, and those two line up, which they do. Brilliant. Anyone think I've done this before? Okay, so we'll look through the front view. Now the grid is not helping us here, so we'll disable the grid in using the button here. And now we're going to draw a line from here and up here, snapping pretty much on these points. We're not going to do this point here though. We're going to leave those out. They'll become important later, because we want this line to come through and come through to the bottom, and we're going to add these edges in later. Okay, so before we do that, we'll need the tool. So create again, this time curve tools and CV curve tool, and we'll choose the option box, release on that, reset tool. So normally it would be in this would be the default. We'll change it to linear like every other curves, so we're all keeping the same sort of spec. We still have grid snapping on, so let's lay our first point. So click, click, click. Now these will line up. Now skip this one and go to this one. Skip that one and go to the next one, and then continue on. Oh, if you do it wrong, like I just did, backspace will take you out. Click it again. You can also click and drag until you find the point you want, so it's like a rubber band, And when we're happy with that, press enter on the keyboard to drop the curve. Perspective. It's just spacebar and drag up as perspective view. And then we'll move that into position. In this case it's -7 in Z. So now they're all lining up. So we can hide this by clicking that to make it disappear. And we've got our base shape. Well, our curves for our shape. To show you the CVs, I'm going to select all the curves. Go to display, NURBS, CVs. So now you can see them in the viewport. And if you wanted to, you could edit them. But they're just there for you to see. Alright, so let's make our shape, our surface. So if we select all of these, holding shift, go to surfaces, boundary, let's do the option box. I'm just going to go edit, reset settings, because it's generally good to do that because you never know what they were set before. I'm going to choose polygons from the output and control points. So the vertexes will go where our curve points are. Okay, apply. Something's not right there. What did I do wrong? Cubic. Aha, it's not on linear. Change that to linear. This is why you have it on linear, because if it's not on linear, Maya will do an interpolation between the linear and cubic. So let's try again. Select this one, this one, this one, this one, and apply. There we go. Can you see? That's actually, I'm glad that mistake happened, because on the previous training the other day, we did have those outcomes, so now I know why it happened. So that's good. So you should end up with this shape. So we don't need a curve anymore, so let's bring up our outliner. I'm going to dock it to the right because that's where I like it. If you want to pick it, if it's already docked, just grab the tab and you can pick it up and you can move it to where you want it to be. So you can dock it on the left if you wanted, like that. But I like it on the right, because it means that if you select something here, you've got the options right next to it. So we don't need to see these curves or the reference object. So hide all those. Here's our boundary surface we're making. Alright, so this edge is the one we want to get rid of, but first we're going to drop in one edge here and one edge here. Hold down shift, right click, multi-cut, hold shift to snap it to the center, 50%, click on the red vertex, snap it to the center, right click to drop the edge, press Q on the keyboard. Now I've got soft select switched on, press B to deselect or to toggle your soft select, so we don't need that, we just want this edge here. Delete on the keyboard, it's gone. And now we're ready to start mirroring our object. So we can select object in the outliner, or you could just right click and go select object mode there. And now we want to mirror it. So I'm going to hold down shift, right click, and we go to mirroring options here. This is very hit and miss, so I'm just going to reset this so it's all defaults. So I found what works best. If you change the world to bounding box, it takes the bounding box of the object in question. We don't want to do automatic merge threshold, we want to do custom. Now our mesh is all, if you follow the, it'll be precise, so we can go quite, we don't have to go quite so small as that, we can go quite a little bit larger than that. So 0.01 for that value. Smoothing, I mean we're going to be converting this into a smoothed mesh anyway, so the smoothing angle is really just for polygonal normals, but once the object's smooth, the normal smoothing is really not really relevant. So we can just leave that as a default. I'm going to do Z, and let's see, apply. Okay, so that was wrong. I mean, unless you wanted that shape, but we don't. So we want to change it to positive, negative. So I'll try positive sign. There we go. So it's done depth-wise. So we want to do it. Let's try X. And it's done that one. And now we want to do Y. And I think this would be negative, so it's going down. Fingers crossed. Yay! We got it. Perfect. Okay, so we don't need them more. These are all surplus requirements. So if we click off and right click, click object mode. So now, in press 5, we have our beautiful shape, and if you press 3, it's short, 5 and 3, beautiful smooth object. So now let's give some thickness to this, so it's not paper thin. So let's select our faces, double click, not spacebar, shift right click, extrude face. Now grid snapping's on, disable that, and move the blue handle in. If you look over here on the channel box, it gives you a value. I'm going to put it in as 2.5. That should be enough. And click off. Okay, so that's great. Now you could insert more edges in here to create a tighter loop, but we're going to use this as an opportunity to look at crease sets. So right click, edges. Let's select our relevant edges, this one and this one. I'm going to create two sets today, this one and this one. So there they are. So if we want to create the sets, spacebar, Windows, modeling editors, presets. Create a new one, there we go. And we'll do the same for the top. Double click here, double click here, double click here, and double click here, and apply new. Now why would I do two? Well, it becomes obvious in a minute, because sets aren't just for setting different values, which are useful. We can also use them to select these later on to do what we're going to do for the distortion. So let's do that. So let's turn on our grid back again, and let's turn on our snapping again, and we're going to soft select these two ends, and we're going to move it to the distortion. So before we do that, let's change the move tool by pressing W on the keyboard. I'm going to double click the move tool and bring up the soft selection dialog here. Okay, so what we want to do is turn on soft select. Remember, B on the keyboard will do the same. We'll toggle this on and off. Now I could just reselect these again, or I can go to the first crease set here and go select. You see what happened there? I've actually used the set members for our creases to make selections, which is kind of cool. So I've already set it to 20, which is the correct value. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to linear, the profile here, just to show you what this profile does. So if I move this back to create our shape, it creates a very linear straight line. Can you see? It's because the fall off is followed. So if I press Z on the undo to undo that, if I change it to something more smoother, like this one, which is more the shape we want, and now we move it back, we now get a lovely, beautiful curve. So it's very, very useful later on in our modeling to have that sort of facility. So again, so here we got a second set here. We can ask it to select, and you see how easy this is. We can just now move that into place. We don't have to go around and make those selections again, because the set here is doing the work for us, which is very, very cool. You can add elements to sets, but so if you say, for example, you didn't want the inner edge here to be part of the set, so if we can say, well, what is this set? So we can select it. Oh, it's this one. Great. So if I turn off soft select, I double click this edge here and this edge here, I could effectively remove them from the set like this. It's quite nice, quite interesting shapes. You can, or you could add it back in again. So we've done new, add, remove, select, and delete is pretty self-obvious. So if I was to say select this and do delete, it will remove the set from the bottom. I proceed to restore it. And that is crease sets. And that is also the design completed. Thank you very much.